Hey, my name is George. I'm 68, and last summer I discovered that being underestimated by your own family can be the fiercest kind of motivation. It all started on a lazy Sunday morning. I was sipping my coffee on the porch, watching Ethan, Sophie, and David zip around the driveway on their new bikes, when I heard Sophie laugh a little too loud. "Grandpa's slowpoke, you're going to be eating our dust if you ever try to keep up." Ethan snorted. David, of course, recorded the whole thing for the family chat. I pretended not to hear, but inside, a spark lit up. I was furious, not in a destructive way, but in that simmering, competitive, can't let this go kind of way. They saw me as slow, old, out of shape. The challenge had been thrown right into my lap, and I wasn't about to ignore it. The family had planned a backyard marathon, a full circuit around the neighborhood. Everyone was confident, including me, that I wouldn't even make the cut. That's when I decided. I wouldn't just participate, I'd dominate. Not out of spite, but to reclaim a piece of pride I didn't realize I had been missing. I dug my old bike out of the garage. The chain squeaked, tires were low, and it had a faint smell of mildew, but it was solid. I adjusted the seat, tightened the brakes, and took it for a slow ride down the driveway. My legs wobbled at first. My knees reminded me of every decade I'd lived. My lungs burned like I was climbing a mountain instead of rolling past a mailbox. I almost laughed at myself. This was going to be harder than I thought. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I wanted the quiet streets to be mine. No jeers, no snickers, no recording devices, just the wind in my ears and the hum of the tires on pavement. I started small, short loops around the block, gradually extending into longer circuits. Every ride I felt a little stronger, a little faster. I documented every mile, every lap, every hill I conquered. It became an obsession. Ethan, Sophie, and David noticed. Naturally, they mocked. Ethan would shout, "Don't hurt yourself, Grandpa. Remember, we're just warming up." Sophie, arms crossed, would scoff, "You sure you know how to ride that thing?" David, he filmed me wobbling down the street, sending it instantly to the family chat with a laughing emoji. Each jibe, each sneer was like fuel. Every mockery was a reminder, keep pushing. Some days were brutal. The heat would hit, my legs would scream, and doubts would sneak in. What if they're right? Maybe I'm too old for this. But then I'd see a hill ahead, take a deep breath, and attack it. Each climb was a small victory, each mile a tiny defiance. I learned to shift gears efficiently, pace myself, and conserve energy. I learned to ride not just with my legs, but with strategy. One afternoon, as I crested a particularly challenging hill, I noticed Ethan struggling behind me. His face was red, his legs pumping furiously. Sophie was close, muttering under her breath about how slow I was. But in that moment, I realized something important. The real battle wasn't just about speed. It was about proving to myself that age, experience, and perseverance could overcome youth and arrogance. I started documenting every ride, every milestone, screenshots of distances, times, even short video clips showing my progress. Not to boast, but to see the proof in black and white. And honestly, it kept me honest. I couldn't cheat myself. Progress had to be earned. Soon, the small victories started adding up. I could ride longer, faster, with more control. The kids' laughter slowly turned into disbelief. Their commentary shifted from outright mockery to subtle surprise. Ethan asked once, half joking, "Grandpa, did you actually just pass me?" I smiled but didn't answer. Let them wonder. Let them see the results without me explaining a thing. By the time the week before the family marathon arrived, I was ready. My legs were stronger than I'd felt in years. My endurance had improved beyond what I thought possible, and my confidence was through the roof. This wasn't about embarrassing them, It was about rewriting the story they'd been telling about me for decades. The slow grandpa narrative was about to end. And let me tell you, when that starting line finally arrived, I felt an electrifying mix of nerves and excitement. I could see Ethan, Sophie, and David grinning, already assuming the outcome. Little did they know, I wasn't just participating. I was competing, and I had every intention of leaving every doubt behind me on that track. So, stick around, because the next part is when the real fun begins. The first time I passed a grandkid mid-course, and the shock on their faces that Grandpa might actually be faster than they imagined. How would you handle being underestimated by your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. The morning of the family marathon arrived, and the air was buzzing with excitement. I, George, felt a strange mixture of calm and adrenaline. Ethan, Sophie, and David were stretching on the lawn, bikes lined up, helmets askew, grinning like they owned the race before it even started. I tightened my helmet strap, gave my bike one last check, and focused on one thing: the course, the pedaling, and the finish line. As soon as the whistle blew, chaos erupted. Ethan shot forward like a rocket, Sophie taking a sharp curve with surprising skill, and David following, laughing at something on his phone. I didn't rush. I had learned from training that pacing was key. My legs moved steadily, the rhythm familiar, almost meditative. With every turn of the pedals, I felt the years in my muscles paying off. By the first hill, Ethan was struggling. His young legs burned, and for a fleeting second, he glanced back at me with disbelief. That moment alone was enough to fuel me. Sophie was aggressive, leaning forward, trying to catch me in speed. But my preparation had taught me to handle inclines, and soon enough I was beside her, passing her carefully, smiling as her eyes widened. David's laughter turned into an exclamation of surprise. I could hear snippets of commentary behind me. "No way, Grandpa! Did he just?" And it was hilarious. I had become the ghost in the family's narrative, the one they underestimated, the slowpoke, now silently leading the charge. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I wasn't just proving them wrong. I was proving to myself that persistence matters more than assumptions about age. Halfway through, the biggest challenge awaited. The steepest hill in the neighborhood, one I had trained on endlessly. Ethan tried to sprint ahead, Sophie flanking him, David hesitating behind. I shifted gears, adjusted my posture, and attacked the hill with everything I had. My lungs burned, sweat poured, and every muscle screamed. But I remembered my morning rides, the countless loops, the times I had been mocked. This was for that George, the one who refused to give up. And then it happened. I crested the hill. Ethan was 2 bikes ahead, Sophie struggling, David lagging slightly. But the grin on my face was unstoppable. I coasted down the hill, letting gravity work in my favor, passing Sophie and catching up to Ethan. His mouth opened, laughter mixed with shock, and for a moment I felt a pure victory. Not over them, but over the doubts they had cast over me. The finish line approached. I could see the picnic set up, family cheering, and I realized that this wasn't just a race. It was a statement. Every pedal stroke had been a declaration that age, experience, and determination could outpace arrogance and youthful assumptions. I crossed the line, breathless, victorious. Ethan, Sophie, and David arrived moments later, faces a mixture of awe, embarrassment, and admiration. The silence that followed was more powerful than any cheer. I dismounted, leaned my bike, and simply smiled. They finally understood. The slow grandpa had ridden past not just their expectations, but their assumptions. The pride in my chest was immense, mixed with a touch of humor. Watching their expressions was almost as satisfying as winning itself. That evening, we gathered around the table. Conversations buzzed, but every glance toward me carried a new respect. No more jokes about being slow, no more subtle doubts. I felt something I hadn't felt in decades, being seen, genuinely, for my effort and skill. And as I sat back, thinking of the morning's climbs, the grueling moments, the sweat and laughter, I realized the true lesson wasn't just winning a race. It was about resilience, showing up, and letting actions speak louder than words. My family had taught me something unexpected. Sometimes underestimation is the best motivator you could ever ask for. So here I am, George, 68, tired but victorious, sharing this story because maybe it will inspire someone out there to pedal harder, persist longer, and prove themselves in ways that matter. And remember, stick with your passions. Sometimes your biggest victories come when everyone else doubts you. How would you handle being underestimated by your family? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. The morning after the family bike marathon felt like waking up in a strange new world. The teasing from the kids and grandkids had vanished overnight, replaced with a mixture of respect and cautious curiosity. Even though the race was over, the ripple effects were just beginning. I, George, 68, could feel it in the way Ethan avoided joking about my slow old legs, or how Sophie now glanced at me before making a snide remark. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. The victory had stirred something else in me too, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in decades. That night, while everyone slept, I went out for a quiet ride, just me and the road. The air was crisp, and the hum of the tires against the asphalt sounded like a heartbeat, steady and calm. I thought about the comments from the morning. "I didn't think you could do that. Grandpa, you're fast." And "How did you even?" They didn't understand what had driven me. It wasn't just about speed. It was about proving to myself that I wasn't done, that I could still push boundaries. Over the next few days, I noticed the small changes in my family. My grandson Ethan approached me with a helmet in hand, asking if I'd ride with him after school. Sophie, who had always been a little competitive, now nodded when I suggested a route, no sarcastic undertone in her voice. Even David, the youngest, started mentioning training tips he had read online, as if trying to catch up to me in a way I had never imagined. I realized the marathon had shifted the dynamic subtly, almost imperceptibly, and yet profoundly. But not everything was easy. I could still feel the undercurrent of doubt, the silent challenges thrown my way. The first real test came when my grandson challenged me to a sprint up the old hill near our neighborhood park. He grinned like a sly fox, thinking he could finally outpace me. The hill loomed ahead, steep and menacing. I adjusted my gears, felt my legs tense, and started pushing. Ethan surged forward, laughing, sure of victory. But I stayed steady. The morning after the family bike marathon felt like waking up in a strange new world. The teasing from the kids and grandkids had vanished overnight, replaced with a mixture of respect and cautious curiosity. Even though the race was over, the ripple effects were just beginning. I, George, 68, could feel it in the way Ethan avoided joking about my slow old legs, or how Sophie now glanced at me before making a snide remark. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. The victory had stirred something else in me too, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in decades. That night, while everyone slept, I went out for a quiet ride, just me and the road. The air was crisp, and the hum of the tires against the asphalt sounded like a heartbeat, steady and calm. I thought about the comments from the morning. "I didn't think you could do that." "Grandpa, you're fast." And "How did you even?" They didn't understand what had driven me. It wasn't just about speed, it was about proving to myself that I wasn't done, that I could still push boundaries. Over the next few days, I noticed the small changes in my family. My grandson Ethan approached me with a helmet in hand, asking if I'd ride with him after school. Sophie, who had always been a little competitive, now nodded when I suggested a route, no sarcastic undertone in her voice. Even David, the youngest, started mentioning training tips he had read online, as if trying to catch up to me in a way I had never imagined. I realized the marathon had shifted the dynamics subtly, almost imperceptible, and yet profoundly. But not everything was easy. I could still feel the undercurrent of doubt, the silent challenges thrown my way. The first real test came when my grandson challenged me to a sprint up the old hill near our neighborhood park. He grinned like a sly fox, thinking he could finally outpace me. The hill loomed ahead, steep and menacing. I adjusted my gears, felt my legs tense, and started pushing. Ethan surged forward, laughing, sure of victory, but I stayed steady, my rhythm controlled, heart steady. Midway, I started gaining ground. By the top, I was just ahead, my breath controlled, my smile wide. He stopped, stunned, and for the first time, he looked at me differently, not just as a grandfather, but as a competitor. That night, I reflected on everything: the marathon, the secret rides, the unspoken rivalry with my family. It wasn't about showing them up. It was about reclaiming a piece of myself that had been dormant for years. Age had never defined me. The limits had always been in my head. Winning wasn't about the trophy or the applause. It was about proving that persistence, patience, and a little stubbornness could outlast assumptions. Then came the day of the family reunion picnic, where everyone gathered to celebrate the marathon. They had planned games, races, and even a symbolic family relay. I signed up, and though I could feel the familiar underestimation, I let it slide. As the race started, I fell into my own rhythm, aware of every movement, every breath. Ethan and Sophie took off, expecting to leave me behind, but I wasn't going to let that happen. Slowly, I closed the gap. By the final stretch, I was neck and neck with them, and then, with one final push, I surged past both of them, crossing the line first. The silence afterward was almost unbearable. The kids and grandkids looked at me, eyes wide, mouths open. Then, finally, the laughter began. Not mocking, but celebratory. They clapped, cheered, and for the first time, the respect in their eyes matched the pride swelling in my chest. That moment wasn't just victory in a race. It was validation, a silent acknowledgement that I had defied expectations and rewritten the narrative about what a 68-year-old could do. I realized that this was bigger than a family bike race. It was about resilience, courage, and the simple, profound satisfaction of showing up for yourself. My children and grandchildren had doubted me, but I had proven something to them and, more importantly, to myself. And that lesson, it's one I'll carry every day for the rest of my life. Training had become my new ritual. Every morning, I, George, 68, would wake up before dawn, the chill in the air biting at my face. But it didn't matter. The sound of my tires rolling over empty streets felt like music. Each pedal stroke a beat in a rhythm that reminded me I was alive, that I still had fight in me. Ethan and Sophie started joining me, sometimes reluctantly, sometimes with a competitive spark in their eyes, challenging me to go faster. David, the youngest, would watch from the sidewalk, notebook in hand, jotting down observations, as if preparing to study the movements of a seasoned cyclist. The first week, my legs screamed. Muscles I hadn't used in decades ached in protest, but there was a strange satisfaction in the pain. It reminded me I was pushing boundaries, redefining limits I had once accepted as permanent. On one particularly brutal morning, I faced the steepest hill in our neighborhood. My lungs burned, my thighs quivered, and every fiber of my being screamed at me to stop. But I remembered the faces of my family during the marathon, the disbelief, the laughter, the shock when I pulled ahead. That memory fueled me. Inch by inch, I climbed the hill, each pedal stroke a triumph over doubt. Outside training, life continued with its usual chaos. Sophie questioned everything I suggested at first, her tone skeptical. But as days passed, she began to nod, listening. Ethan, who had always teased me, now offered advice on bike mechanics, almost like a teammate rather than a mischievous grandson. I could see them internalizing lessons about perseverance without me ever saying a word. And there was a strange joy in that silent mentorship, a passing down of resilience and discipline. Then came the first big family event after the marathon, a local charity cycling challenge. I registered, knowing it would be another test of endurance. The night before, sleep was elusive. I kept thinking about my children's doubts, the skepticism that lingered even after the family race. It wasn't just about winning, it was about proving consistency, showing that what I had achieved wasn't a fluke. Race day arrived. The starting line was a mess of colors, whistles, and nervous energy. I took a deep breath, adjusted my helmet, and felt that familiar mixture of anxiety and excitement. The whistle blew, and we surged forward. I paced myself, aware of every movement, every shift in gear. Ethan and Sophie started fast, trying to take the lead. I watched them, calculating, waiting for the right moment. And then the hills came, sharp, relentless inclines that tested stamina and resolve. I pushed. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but my mind was focused. I could hear the whispers from the sidelines, cheers, disbelief. One elderly participant shouted, "Keep going, old-timer!" It made me chuckle, a mix of irony and pride. I wasn't just a competitor, I was a symbol, a reminder that age was no excuse to surrender dreams. By the final stretch, I was near the front. Ethan was panting heavily, Sophie's competitive fire dimming as fatigue set in. I surged, channeling every ounce of energy, and crossed the finish line first. The moment was surreal. Hands on my knees, gasping for air, I looked around. Faces of children, grandchildren, and strangers alike reflected astonishment. For a moment, the years, the doubts, and the slow mornings of pain melted away, leaving only the triumphant reality of achievement. That evening, at home, we celebrated modestly. No trophies, no fanfare, just the quiet acknowledgement of what had been accomplished. My grandchildren asked questions about training, diet, endurance. Ethan even said, "Grandpa, I think I need to ride with you more often." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same boy who called me slow was now asking to follow in my footsteps, literally and figuratively. And yet, despite the pride and the validation, there was a subtle hum of introspection. Winning races wasn't the point. It was about persistence, the reclaiming of confidence, and the subtle reshaping of family dynamics. It was about showing, without words, that limitations were often mental constructs, challenges to be approached with patience, strategy, and grit. The morning of the Veteran Challenge, I, George, 68, woke up with a knot in my stomach I hadn't felt since my first family marathon. News had spread that a former professional cyclist, Harold, now 70, had registered for the local veterans circuit. Everyone talked about him, his speed, his past victories, and suddenly my earlier wins felt like warm-up laps. Ethan and Sophie tried to downplay it. "It's just another race, Grandpa," Sophie said, though her voice trembled with excitement. "You've already proven yourself." Ethan, ever the strategist, handed me a map of the course, pointing out the sharpest turns and steepest inclines. I nodded, appreciating the care, but inwardly my mind raced with doubt. Could I truly compete with someone who had raced professionally? As we arrived at the starting line, the crowd was bigger than before. Veterans lined up, bikes polished, faces stern, focused. Harold was easy to spot. Confident posture, eyes scanning the course like he owned it. I felt the familiar sting of fear, a mix of adrenaline and anxiety. But then I remembered the family marathon, the disbelief on Ethan's and Sophie's faces, the echo of laughter that had transformed into applause. I straightened my back, adjusted my helmet, and reminded myself that I had earned my right to be here. The whistle blew, and we were off. Harold surged ahead immediately, muscles moving with mechanical precision. I tried to match his pace, but quickly realized that pushing too hard too soon would ruin me later. Instead, I focused on rhythm, breathing, cadence, everything I had honed during countless early morning rides. By mid-course, the inclines were punishing. Harold looked effortless, a blur of movement, but I felt my own strength growing with every pedal stroke. Each rotation of the wheels was a victory over doubt, every breath a reminder that age was not my enemy. My grandchildren's faces flashed in my mind, their teasing now transformed into admiration. The thought propelled me forward. At the final stretch, Harold was just ahead. My legs screamed, lungs burned, but determination overrode pain. With a burst of energy I didn't know I still had, I closed the gap. The finish line loomed. The crowd erupted. I pushed harder. Inches from Harold, I surged past him, crossing the line first. Breathless, heart pounding, I looked around. Faces of competitors, spectators, and family showed shock and excitement. Harold nodded at me, respect in his eyes. I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and elation. The win wasn't just a trophy, it was a testament to persistence, resilience, and the power of proving oneself against all odds. Back home, the family celebration was quiet but heartfelt. Ethan and Sophie clapped, smiling with newfound respect. I watched David's awestruck expression as he scribbled notes about strategy and endurance. The teasing had vanished, replaced by admiration. I realized then that the race wasn't just about speed, it was about proving that perseverance and belief in oneself could reshape perception, earn respect, and even mend relationships strained by doubt. After the veteran race, I was lying on the bedroom floor, feeling the aching muscles in my legs as a reminder of the battle I had just endured. The victory was exhilarating, but the emotional weight was far heavier than I had expected. Doubts, years of mockery from the family, lingering mistrust, it all pressed down on me. I realized the race was over, but the internal journey was just beginning. First, the kids came in, beaming from ear to ear. Their joy was genuine, but I sensed admiration in it. They followed, cheeks flushed with pride. "I can't believe we ever doubted you," one of them said softly, almost hesitantly. Another peeked from the doorway with a notebook in hand, taking notes as if a tiny coach. Their faces reflected a mix of astonishment, respect, and something I hadn't seen in a long time: trust in me. The real victory wasn't at the finish line. It was their recognition, the reversal of every doubt ever thrown at me. Years of calling me slow, incapable, outdated, now their looks had changed. Their laughter had transformed from mockery into celebration, from distrust into inspiration. I realized that perseverance was stronger than any trophy or applause. That night, lying in bed in the quiet of the house, I reflected on everything I had endured. Pain, early morning rides, sweat, and effort, it had all been worth it. Winning the race wasn't just proof of speed or strength, it was proof of resilience, a lesson through personal example, affirmation that age is just a number, not a barrier. I remembered the moments that defined this journey. The mockery, the challenges, the quiet observation, all mirrors of my growth. Family marathons, local races, the veteran race, these were not only physical trials, they were tests of spirit. Every pedal stroke was a step toward restoring self-belief and inspiring those around me. Later, we gathered for a small family dinner. The kids eagerly discussed future rides, planning routes, joking about trying to beat me next time. I smiled, listening to them, feeling warmth in my chest. The mockery had turned into playful motivation. I had become a symbol of endurance, persistence, and quiet strength in not giving up. Finally, I spoke, voice firm but gentle. Remember, it's not just about who finishes first. What matters is showing up, overcoming challenges, and believing in yourself. A short pause followed, a collective breath, then nods and murmurs of agreement. I knew they understood. Not just the thrill of victory, but its meaning. Triumph over doubts, restored confidence, changed family respect. That night, cleaning my bike, I felt a rare peace. The race was over, the trials endured, the family dynamic transformed. The echo of laughter, doubt, and mockery had shifted to respect, pride, and connection. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen. I looked at my reflection in the window, the silhouette of an older man who had been underestimated for years. A smile spread across my face, a mix of triumph, relief, and satisfaction. I had turned every doubt, every insult, every whisper into fuel. I rode past skepticism, past fear, and reached not only the finish line, but a personal victory. How would you handle a situation like this? Share your thoughts in the comments.